Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. This is Bucket Ponds, and my name is Terry. I seek to enlighten, entertain, and encourage you to start your own projects. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and here we go. So today we're talking about the farm aquarium, my farm tank. Specifically, this is where I grow all of my macroalgae, my beautiful Nitella macroalgae, and I also have some bladderwort in here, and a little bit of duckweed. But today we're looking at the snails. I've noticed that my bladder snail videos are getting more views, and that's really cool. Those are my favorite videos, and I'm glad that you guys like them. So I wanted to show them to you again. We have some interesting stuff going on here. The snails, they seem to have a tether of some kind. He's almost like a safety line for a spider. You can see he's clearly tethered to something in the tank there. We can't see it. It's completely invisible. But he is attached to something, and that's not an effect of the current in the water. It's actually flowing to the left. So he's attached to some kind of a safety line or a web or a snail slime or something. I'm not sure how that's happening, but you can see some very interesting movement and stuff when they do this. There he is again in the background. You can see he's just kind of bobbing around and just moving throughout the water column. It's very strange. But I'm happy that my snails are doing so well. We have a few hundred bladder snails in here, as well as some pond snails, and of course all my other small creatures in my ecosystems. This is one of my most successful aquariums, and I don't show it on the channel very much because it is a low light tank, and it's pretty hard to see in here, to be honest. This little portion here is lit up pretty well. But yes, this tank is, it's hard to show, so I don't talk about it too much. This is a 30-gallon aquarium, and I have never done a water change in about 3 years, and we rely entirely on the macroalgae as filtration. Now, I do have a couple sponge filters in here, some very small 2.5-gallon sponge filters with attached air pumps, and that provides the current there, the flow of the water that you see. And we also have some skirted tetras in here with our snails. But this tank is doing really well, and I'm very happy with it. And just the strange motion that we see in these snails when they're attached to their safety lines. I'm not sure what else to call it. It's almost like a web from a spider. But they move so strange when they're doing this, and yeah, I just love to see it and watch it. There's also some bladder snail eggs that you can see here and there, and that snail is just cruising all throughout the water column. But these guys are physella bladder snails, physella acuta, if I've said that right. They are pan-Arctic, meaning they are all around the world, and odds are you can find them in most aquariums. A lot of people consider them to be pests, but I love these snails and I consider them to be pets. Now, most bladder snails that you find will be isolated in various aquariums. I've sped up the footage here a little bit just so you can get an idea of the movement. But most bladder snails have been kept in isolation, their family lines separated from others for long periods of time. But with my bladder snails, I've actually acquired 4 different genetic strains from 4 different states here in the United States. Georgia, Florida, Texas, and Kentucky, I believe. But I've crossbred all of these different family lines, and I've strengthened my snails. I've improved their genetic diversity and their immune systems, their lifespans. They're just much stronger than your average bladder snail. And I like to say that I have the strongest, most hardy bladder snails on the planet, and I do believe that's true. Now, they're not technically hybrids because they're all the same species, but anytime you have an isolated breeding population, you know, it will weaken them over time. So crossing them with other breeding populations has strengthened them and made them more healthy. Now, I have some pond snails in here as well, but they tend to stay more towards the middle of the tank, and the bladder snails seem to dominate this corner over here, so I wanted to show that. I also have some detritus worms in here. There he is. Yeah, there's several of them in here. They're pretty active, and this is just a very small cross-section of my tank, so magnify this by, I don't know, 30 or 40 times, and you'll get an idea of the life in this aquarium. But these are my very same detritus worms. When I first got into aquariums about 3 or 4 years ago, you know, the first tank I got was sort of donated to me, and it came with some plants and some bladder snails and some detritus worms. And I'm very happy to see that both of these species are still thriving in my tanks. And yeah, I've developed my methods for how I do things around these snails and these worms. Now, my methods for aquariums, they're not traditional, you know, according to like the modern ideology when it comes to aquariums. I should have changed water in here about 30 times by now. But the fun fact is that I have never changed water in this tank, and it just does not need it. Now, this is a very special aquarium, and it works through some very low oxygen zones in the very bottom opposite corner of this aquarium. So you cannot emulate this in your traditional clean tank, you know. But in a heavily planted nature aquarium like this, you do not need to do water changes. You can get by just fine. Your fish will survive. Everything will do well. And there's very little problems with this tank. Very little maintenance. I actually keep this in front of a window, so it gets natural sunlight along with a supplemental LED bulb up top. People will tell you to never have an aquarium near a window. It'll cause massive algae growth and whatnot, and that's true. But in my tanks, you know, I grow Nitella macroalgae. I grow specific algae that prevents other species, other strains from taking over. For instance, I've never had to clean the glass in this tank. I've never had to scrape glass. I've never had to vacuum the mulm, nothing like that. Because we have so many detritivores and other creatures in here that this is a natural pond, essentially. And no one's out there changing the water in a pond. Nobody's out there vacuuming the mulm. You know, nature has ways to deal with all of this stuff, and that's what I've emulated here. But my bladder snails are doing great. There's hundreds of them in this tank, and I just want to show you guys what's possible with the way that I do things. And maybe you do something similar at home. We even see some snails here with eggs laid on their shell. Somebody laid eggs on that snail, most likely as they were mating. And all that activity in the background, they're eating and mating on one another in massive swarms, and it's just amazing. So I'm going to go for now, guys. I'll have more videos soon. I know I've been missing my mark for weekly videos, but I've been working nights and working crazy schedules at my day job, so I'm just trying to get by and do what we got to do. But my name's Terry. This is Bucket Ponds. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time with more bladder snails.